Hare Krishna, dear devotees, please accept our humble obeisances. All glories to Jagat Guru Srila Prabhupada. All glories to our revered speaker for today, His Grace Salika Prabhu. Devotees, we thank you all for being here. Salika Prabhu, thank you for being here. We may put the verse on the screen and then you may start. You may begin. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you. Om Namo Bhagavati Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavati Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Narayana Namaskritam.
Narayana Namaskrityam.
Narayana Narayana Narottamam. Devi Sarasvati Vyasam.
Devi Saraswati Vyasa.
Tato Jayam Udirayet.
Tato Jaya Muderaya.
Nasta Apraisu Abadresu.
Asta Parisu Abhadyasu.
Nityam Bhagavatam Sevaya.
Nitya Bhagavatam Sevaya.
Bhagavati Uttama Sloke.
Bhagavati Uttama Sloke.
Bhakti Bhavati Naisiki.
Bhakti Bhavati Naisike.
So, before reciting this Srimad Bhagavatam, which is the very means of Vedic conquest, one should offer respectful obeisances unto personality of God and Narayan, unto Narayan Rishi, the supermost human being, unto Mother Sarasvati, the goddess of learning, and unto Srila Vyasadeva, the author of the Srimad Bhagavatam. By regular attendance in classes of Srimad Bhagavatam and by rendering of service unto the pure devotees, all that is troublesome to the heart is almost completely destroyed, and loving service unto the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is praised with transcendental songs, is established as an irrevocable fact. So we're reading from today from Srimad Bhagavatam, 3rd canto. We are reading from chapter 11. We'll be reading text number 15 and 16. Ya Sritya Saktim Urdu Swasayam Swasatyam Pumso Brahmaya Divi Davanti Buddha Abedaha. Sorry for that distraction. My phone wasn't on silent, sorry. I'll take the verse again. Yas Jasre Jasaktim Urdosh Swasyam Swa Asakya Pumso Brahmaya Divi Davate Bhuto Vedaha Kalakyaya Gunamayam Pratubi Vitanya Vahams Tasmai Bralim Arata Vatsara Panchakaya. Translation. O Vidura, the sun enlivens all living entities with its unlimited heat and light. It diminishes the duration of life of all living entities in order to release them from their illusion of material attachment. And it enlarges the path of the elevation to the heavenly kingdom. It thus moves in the firmament with great velocity, and therefore Everyone should offer him respects once every 5 years with all ingredients of worship. Text number 16. Vidura uvacha Petre deva manusyanaham Hayu param idam smeritaham Parisham gatim achak swaha Yesu kalpa bahividaha Vidura uvacha Petre deva manusyanam Ayu param idam smritam Parisham gatim achak swaha Yesu kalpa bahividaha. Watch for what translation? Vidura uvacha. Vidura said, Petri, the Peter planets, Devaha, the heavenly planets, Manushyanam, and that of the human beings, Ayu, duration of life, Param, final, Idaham, in their own measurement, Smritam, calculated, Parisham, of the superior living entities, Gatim, duration of life, Akshakswaha, kindly calculate, yea, all those who still are Kalpahat from the millennium, Bahi outside, Vidaha greatly learned. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace, Sila Bhai Charana Ravinda, Sila Esi Bhakti Vedanta Swami Patita Pavandaga Guru Shila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Vidura said, I now understand the life durations of the resident of the Peters planets and heavenly planet as well as that of the human beings. Now, kindly inform me of the durations of life of those greatly learned living entities who are beyond the range of a kalpa. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. The partial dissolution of the universe that takes place at the end of Brahma's day does not affect all the plenary systems. The planets of highly learned living entities like the sages Sanaka and Brigu are not affected by the dissolutions of the millenniums. All the planets are of different types, and each is controlled by a different Kala Chakra, or schedule of eternal time. The time of the Earth planet is not applicable to others, more elevated planets. Therefore, Vidura herein inquires about the duration of life on other planets. Omagyanam timirandasya Gyanam Gyanam Chalakaya Shakshu Militam Jenatasmai Shri Gurave Namah Sri Chaitanya Mano Bhishtam Stapitam Jena Bhutale Swayam Rupam Kadamayam Dadati Swam Padantikam Bandhyam Sri Guru Sri Yutam Padam Kamalam Sri Guru Vaishnavamsya Sri Rupam Sagrajatam Saganam Ragunatam Vitam Tam Saajivam Sadvitam Savadutam Parijanam Saitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padam Saganam Lalita Sri Vikatam Vishakamitam Shaham He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpati Gopisha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gorange Radhe Vindavandeshwari Rishabhanu Shute Dev Pranamami Nari Priye Mukam karoti bachalam pangam lagayate girim. Yat kripata hamba ande sri guru dinatarinam. Vancha karpa tarubhyascha kripa sindubhyasivascha. Patitanam pavashnebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namah. Jai Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadada Srivasadi Gaurabhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Ram, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So we take the verse again. Verse number 16 says that Vidura said, I now understand the life durations of the residents of the Pitta planets, an heavenly planet as well as that of the human beings. Now kindly inform me of the duration of life of those greatly learned living entities who are beyond the range of a kalpa. Hare Krishna. So once again, we welcome all of the Vaishnava devotees who are seated listening to this conversation this evening, my local time, to all of the predecessors acharyas, unto the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Narayan. To Mother Saraswati, the goddess of learning, to Vyasadev, the author of the Srimad Bhagavatam. We pray that we may be able to render this service for the great pleasure of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, for the purification of ourselves, and for the listening pleasure of the Vaishnava devotees. So today we're reading from the third canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam, the 11th chapter, text number 15 and 16, which is the continuation of the discussions we've been having, discussing the calculation of time from the atom, based on the question raised by Vidura to the great sage Maitreya Muni. And great powerful speakers have spoken from different perspectives on this subject of calculation of time, expanded on the knowledge that is shared by Maitreya Muni. And when we're talking about the personality speaking, it is important because the knowledge that one acquires or have or expresses is not as important as the source of the knowledge. One can exhibit, one can speak, one can even try to teach a particular knowledge, but that knowledge is not so important as the source of that knowledge. In the Bhagavad Gita, Lord Krishna, in the chapter 4 of the Bhagavad Gita, text number 38, Lord Krishna told Arjuna, Nahi dhyanena sa'adrisham pavitram hiya vidyate tatsvayam yoga samsida kale natmani vindati. Lord Krishna is telling Arjuna that in this world, There is nothing so sublime and pure as a transcendental knowledge. And he described that knowledge as the matured fruit of all mysticisms, and one who has become accomplished in the practice of devotional service enjoy this knowledge within himself in due course of time. This is a very powerful statement regarding to knowledge as given by Lord Krishna himself. That in this material world, there is no knowledge that is so powerful, that is so sublime, that is so pure. And we all know the meaning of the word purity, that is uncontaminated. In this material world, everyone is suffering as a result of the kind of knowledge they've acquired. And those who are being happy in this material world are being happy as a result of the knowledge that they have been exposed to. The nature of this material world as told by Lord Krishna to Arjuna in the chapter 5 of the Bhagavad Gita. In the chapter 8, sorry. Mam upeti apu na jarma dukalayam as aswatam. That the nature of this material world is such a miserable place. In fact, the very scriptures describe this material world as a dark place, full of darkness. The only reason that there is visibility in this material world is as a result of the shining lamp of the eye of the Lord in the form of the sun. And in darkness, we all have experienced how disturbing, how uncomfortable one becomes. So all forms of sufferings in the material world as a result of the darkness that engulfs the living entity in the material world. So therefore, Lord Krishna is glorifying here that in this material world, there is nothing as sublime and pure as transcendental knowledge, which Vidura is tapping from a pure transcendental personality like Maitreya Muni. We all know the back end of the story. Maitreya Muni, at the time Lord Krishna was leaving the planet, Maitreya Muni had the great opportunity to have a darshan of the Lord. And the Lord directly transmitted that knowledge onto him. And that knowledge is what is replicated. That knowledge is what is given in this Srimad Bhagavatam. So therefore, in the first canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam, in the very first chapter, text number 3, there is a declaration. Nigama kalpatarugalitam falaham Sukha mukad avrita drava samyutam Pibata bhagavatam rasam alayam Muho aho rasika bhuvi bhuvuka. That, O expert and thoughtful men, release the Srimad Bhagavatam. Why? Because the Bhagavatam is the matured fruit of the desired tree of Vedic literatures. And what is the source of that, not Vedic literature? It is emanating from the lips of Sri Sukha Goswami. Therefore, this fruit has become even more tasteful, although its nectarian juice was already relishable for all, including the liberated soul. So the word of Krishna, when it emanates from the mouth of his pure devotees, it becomes more sweeter. And when we look at the sequence of the knowledge that is being disseminated in this chapter, of the Srimad Bhagavatam by Maitreya Muni to Vidura. Our dear mother, Mother Sri Radha Govinda yesterday was speaking eloquently and explaining the descriptions of the time. And this class is a follow-up on that conversation that we had yesterday. There are key things that she said based on the purport of Srila Prabhupada. In the text that we read yesterday, in the purport of that text number 14, Srila Prabhupada said, the subject matters of physics, chemistry, mathematics, astronomy, time and space dealt with in the above verses of Srimad Bhagavatam are certainly very interesting. And Prabhupada clarified to students of the particular subject. And that is very key. And Prabhupada, when Prabhupada uses word, he uses them with a precise context. He said, this is very interesting to students of the particular subject. In other words, this subject matter, although it is part of the transcendental subject matter that is part of the enlarged subject matter of the Srimad Bhagavatam, but this subject matters of calculations of time into its nitty-gritty to the minuteless level are interested to a particular set of students. And Prabhupada did not stop there. He went further and said, but as far as we are concerned, Prabhupada said, as far as we are concerned, now Prabhupada is referring to us, the devotees, talking about the knowledge that we acquire, because when there is a body of knowledge, unless one is intelligent and one has been bestowed by the double mercy of Guru and Krishna, it becomes very difficult to catch the essence. And that is why you see that in a class taught by one single teacher, same subject matter and same textbook, these students gather and learn different things. Because what becomes important to those students become different because of the position those individual students are situated. So Srila Prabhupada is saying here, but as we are concerned, we cannot explain them very thoroughly in terms of technical knowledge. The subject matter is summarized by the statement that above all, the different branches of knowledge is the supreme control of Kala, the plenary representation of the supreme personality of God. That is the summary. And further in that text, Prabhupada said, nothing exists without him, and therefore everything, however wonderful it may appear to our mega knowledge, is but the work of the magical wand of the Supreme Lord. So in other words, as we listen to this chapter of the Bhagavatam, now we are discussing text number 15 and 16. And then Vidura is saying that in the text number 15, Maitreya Muni started by explaining that, O Vidura, the sun enlivens all living entities with his unlimited heat and light. Is giving the core reasons or the powerful work that the sun does in the life of all living entities. What is that work? It diminishes the duration of life of all living entities. In other words, as the day sun rises and the sun sets, the duration of life of the living entity on this planet is reduced. And what is the purpose? Is the Supreme Personality of Godhead wicked? Because when we talk about diminishing returns it is looked at in the material nature as being negative. But this is not what it is. In that statement of material money says this is done in such a manner to release the living entities from their illusion of material attachment. In other words, the whole of the calculations of this time, this minute calculation of the time, the knowledge that is given in this particular chapter of the Srimad Bhagavatam are for this purpose of what? To release the living entities from their illusion of material attachment. In other words, after studying the whole of the technicalities, as Prabhupada mentioned in the purport of the last text, after studying all of these technical details about time and its calculation, if one does not understand that the essence, the purpose is to get the living entities to be aware of the supreme, as Prabhupada said in the last text, the supreme position of the supreme personality of Godhead, and this arrangement to release the living entities from the bondage of birth, death, old age, and disease, and to enlarge the path of elevation to the higher kingdoms. That is the purpose, as mentioned here, by material money. And so he concluded his statement. He said, and therefore everyone should offer respect once every year. These are regulations. In 1970, on the 13th of May specifically, Srila Prabhupada gave a lecture. And that lecture is titled Dangerous Education. Prabhupada took that class from a verse from the Isopanishad, where it says, mantra number 9 of Sri Isopanishad, Andam tama pravishanti ye vidyam upasate tato buya ivate tamo yao vidyayam amrata. Those who are engaged in the culture of the science activities shall enter into the darkest region of ignorance. What still are those engaged in the so-called culture of knowledge? Thank you so much, Masarifu. What still are those engaged in the culture of the so-called knowledge? And when you look at the purport, a little bit into the purport distinguishes what it means, what it meant by this knowledge. As far as Vidya is concerned, the first mantra has explained very clearly that the Supreme Lord is the proprietor of everything, and that forgetfulness of this fact is ignorance. The more a man forgets this fact of life, the more he is in darkness. In view of this, a godless civilization directed towards the so-called advancement of education is more dangerous than a civilization in which the masses of people are less educated. And that is why this particular class, we're focusing on knowledge. And we started by how Krishna is describing how sublime knowledge is. But in this text, we are hearing that it is to engage in the culture of science as the material educationists, material scientists are doing. It's a gateway into entering into the darkest region of ignorance. But that is bad enough. But even worse than that is for those who are engaged in the so-called culture of knowledge. And when we read this verse, sometimes we think and we ascribe this text, this language, to Mayavadis, to impersonalists, and all of that. But this is a deeper subject matter. Why? Because When we look at Srila Prabhupada's work, Srila Prabhupada came to America in 1965 at the ripe age of 70. And he had just 11 years, within which he has to write books, guide disciples who have no knowledge, zero knowledge about anything, not to talk of Vedic or basic, even basic material knowledge of cleanliness. And within this period of time, Prabhupada has to establish temples. He has to establish a movement that will be the lifeline for the 10,000 years of Kali Yuga. His spiritual master has ordered him to establish the Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's vision for this age. Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu appeared. Namo Mahavandayaya Krishna Prema Pradayate. Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he has come. He has established this Krishna consciousness movement for a purpose. And to expand that knowledge, Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and Lord Nityananda Balaram and Srila Bhakti Vinoda Thakur, they predicted that sometime within this period, a Sena Bhakta will appear and they will disseminate this knowledge. So Srila Prabhupada fulfilled that mission. And in a span of 11 years, he was able to establish the temples. He has to disseminate knowledge of Vedic scripture that is described here in the chapter we are reading as a very complex knowledge. For those who do not understand, who do not know, who does not have the basic knowledge of even cleanliness or what hands to eat with, they do not know how to clean themselves. So therefore, Srila Prabhupada himself, he will always constantly lament that there's a lot. And if Krishna gives me time, Prabhupada wanted to translate the whole of the Vedic literatures. But Srila Prabhupada saw there was a limited time. So therefore, he chose the most important aspect. Prabhupada, when he looked at the whole span of the Vedic knowledge, Srila Prabhupada looked at what is the most important that will deliver the ultimate goal of the Vedic knowledge. In chapter 15, verse 15 of Bhagavad Gita, like Lord Krishna told Arjuna, the goal, the purpose behind the Vedic knowledge. And Srila Prabhupada knows this purpose. So therefore, he decided, he chose the Bhagavad Gita, the Srimad Bhagavatam. Srila Prabhupada chose the most important. He translated the Bhagavad Gita. He translated the Srimad Bhagavatam. And some few other books. He gave some commentaries because he was focusing on the essence. So Srila Prabhupada said, as far as we are concerned, Prabhupada mentioned in that purport, as far as we are concerned, this is what is important to us. When we hear this deep subject matter of the calculation of time, they are so enticing, they are so attractive, they are so titillating to the senses. And therefore, the material scientists, they got carried away by all of this. So therefore, they engaged the whole of their life trying to expand the same knowledge. But in the purport of the text number 16, Srila Prabhupada is given in the purport based on the question that Vidura raised further. Because when Vidura, when he has had, as we had in the text number 15, Maitreya Muni was telling Vidura, my dear Vidura, the sun enlivens the living entities. So he's telling him that I've given you all of this knowledge. And in text number 16, Vidura is responding. He said, now you have given me the knowledge of the durations of the residents of this planet of the forefathers. You have given me the knowledge of the calculation of life, of the heavenly planets, even that of the living entities on this material planet. Fantastic knowledge, very enticing knowledge, very titillating knowledge. He's saying, in the conclusion of Vidura's question, he said, now, kindly inform me of the duration of life of those greatly learned living entities who are beyond the range of Kalpa. What is important in this? The important thing is that the more we hear, the more we want to hear. Because why? As we earlier explained, the nature of this knowledge is that it is the purest of all purest knowledge. And that is why in chapter 9, text number 2 of the Bhagavad Gita, chapter 9, text number 2 of the Bhagavad Gita, Lord Krishna is telling Arjuna, very beautiful verse. When Krishna was talking to Arjuna, Lord Krishna was telling Arjuna that this knowledge that I'm giving to you, Raja Vidya, Raja Guyam, Pavitram Idam, Uttamam, Pratyasa Bagamam Dharmam Yak, So Sukam Katum Avyayam, that this knowledge is the king of education, the most secret of all secrets. It is the purest knowledge. And because it is gives, what does it do? It gives direct perception of the self-realization. It is the perfection of all religion. It is everlasting and it is joyfully performed. So Srila Prabhupada, in most of the cases, when Prabhupada is paraphrasing verses, you will see in the way he presents it in his purport. So Prabhupada, when he's giving the purport to this verse, in the question of Vidura asking for more knowledge, Srila Prabhupada said, the partial dissolution of the universe that takes place at the end of Brahma's day does not affect the planetary system. The planet of highly learned living entities like the sages, Sanaka and Brigu, are not affected by the dissolution of the millennium. Prabhupada gave information. And he said all the planets are different types. And each controlled by different kala or chakra or schedule of eternal time. The time of the earth planet is not applicable to other, more elevated planet. Therefore, Vidura herein inquires about the duration of life on other planets. Because why? This knowledge, it is what? It is the purest of all knowledge. It is limitless. The more you try to know, the more it inspires you to want to know more. There is no limit to end of it. But one thing is very important. When we look at the conversation of Prahlad Maharaj, in the 7th canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam, chapter 5, when Hiranyakasipu, when he was bewildered by the quality of what Prahlad Maharaj was exhibiting, he was asking the sons of Sukracharya, who are the teachers of his son, whom he delegated to teach Prahlad Maharaj the demoniac way of knowledge, or the mundane knowledge, or what Prabhupada described in the lecture I quoted, dangerous education. When they were teaching this dangerous education, and after so much of teaching of this education, he was bewildered. So therefore, Hiranyakasipu started asking the teachers, what is this nonsense that you have done? He started chastising them. And the son of Sukracharya, in the text number 28, that is, I'm reading from the 7th canto, chapter 5, text number 28, going forward. So the sons of Sukracharya, Hiranyakasipu's spiritual master said, "Oh, enemy of the Indra," is referring to Hiranyakasipu. Whatever your son Prahlad has said was not taught to him by us or anyone else. His spontaneous devotional service has naturally developed in name. Therefore, please give up your anger and do not unnecessarily accuse us. It is not good to insult a brahmana in this way. They were chastising the Kashipu bag, and Narada Muni intervened. And Narada Muni, because he was describing knowledge to Yudhishthira Maharaj, Narada Muni said, when the Kashipu received this reply from the teacher, he began addressing his son, Prahlad. Kashipu said, "You rascal, most of your family, the most fallen of your own family, if you have not received this education from your teachers, where have you gotten it from?" And Prahlad Maharaj replied to his demoniac father. He said, because of their uncontrolled senses, persons too addicted to materialistic life make progress towards hellish condition and repeatedly shew that which has already been shewed. Their inclinations toward Krishna are never aroused, either by the instructions of others, by their own efforts, or by their combination of both. The same thing that we read in the Upanishad, where Prabhupada was giving that lecture, Dangerous Education. When one becomes enamored by the technicalities, by the complexity, by the sweet languages of the Vedic knowledge, it loses the focus of education. Because the education of the Vedic scripture, especially the Bhagavatam, which is described as the most glorious, the essence, the fruit of all essence, just like we all know, the essence of any tree is the fruit that it bears. In devotional service, as we come into this devotional service, as we read the Srimad Bhagavatam, as we listen to the lecture, as we chant the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra, as we worship the deities, as we do this Sadhu Sangha, for millenniums after millenniums, these activities has been going on. And what can continue? This knowledge of time has been given not 1,000 years ago, not 2,000 years ago. When we check yesterday, we are getting the chronological calculation of the expanse of the time of these planets, of different heavenly planets. They are inconceivable to an ordinary mundane mind. But in that conversation, when you go to text number 34 of that verse, in text number 31, sorry, Prahlad Maharaj in his further answer, he said, persons who are strongly entrapped by the consciousness of enjoying material life, and who have therefore accepted their leaders or guru, a similar blind man attached to external sense object, cannot understand the goal of life is to return home back to Godhead and engage in the service of the Lord Vishnu. As blind men guided by another blind man miss the right path and fall into a ditch, materially attached men led by another materially attached man are bound by the ropes of fugitive labor, which are made of very strong cords, and they continue again and again in material life, suffering the threefold mysteries. These are pointers to the essence of our discussion, of our conversation of this Srimad Bhagavatam. The knowledge that is given by the Srimad Bhagavatam is incomparable. There is no knowledge that is close to it. It is the essence of all knowledge. But like Prahlad Maharaj is saying here, one must understand that the ultimate purpose, the same thing that Maitreya Muni is telling Vidura, the same thing Srila Prabhupada is telling, and all of the acharyas are saying, ultimately, the goal of all of this is to come to one conclusion. In the 11th canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam, the same narration is stated there. The ultimate end of all of this is to come to realize that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and devotional service to him is the ultimate activity of the soul. And when one has this kind of understanding, devotional service becomes the ultimate attraction. As this expands body of knowledge, when you look at Radha Govinda yesterday was quoting our dear Sadaputa Prabhu Goswami, when many books he wrote, And the material scientists, archaeologists, astronauts, they're struggling with some of his book. There's one of his book, Hidden Archaeology. And when you look at that book, you'll be wondering, is this information coming from a human being? These are carefully disseminated knowledge as explained in this Srimad Bhagavatam. So Srimad Bhagavatam, we've read in the previous chapters of this Srimad Bhagavatam answered all questions. There is no question that is remaining to be unanswered. All questions has been answered. The conclusion is, what are we doing with all of the answers that is available to us? Srila Prabhupada said, given the opportunity in 18 days, I can change, I can take the control of the whole of the material planet, this planet. And when we look at what the acharyas have given to us, and we see the level of sufferings that is going on in and around us, then there is a need for us to question ourselves. How much, it is not how much about the knowledge that we have acquired, but how much are we able to use this knowledge to impact in our immediate society, in our immediate community. Until now, 50 years after Prabhupada has left the planet, in this couple of days, we'll be celebrating Srila Prabhupada's appearance. And we'll be remembering all of the wonderful things Srila Prabhupada did. But the best legacy of an acharya is how one implants the impactful knowledge received from those an acharya. Why is it difficult that we are not able, after 5 decades, not able to create that place where we can say, this is Goloka Vrindavan on this planet? We can take excuse, as sometimes we compare ourselves to the Christianity, Islamic religion, and some other religious tradition. When you speak, sometimes devotee will tell you, but it took these traditions 50 years or 200 years to beat where they are. But they are able to get there in 200 years because of the knowledge available to them. In Krishna consciousness, there's no dearth of knowledge. Everything that is required to give the perfect solution to the imperfect situation in the material world is already available to us. And why is it that we're not able to impart? We're not able to impart this. Why? Because we are not looking at what the acharyas did. We are so enamored by the sense gratification that we engage in the mood of being a temple devotee, a devotee. When Srila Prabhupada came to the West, let us imagine if Prabhupada became contented with just making devotee and preaching in the temples. Prabhupada was speaking to the journalists. Prabhupada was speaking to the to head of government. Prabhupada was speaking to those who matters in the society. And therefore, he was able to influence a larger space. When you go into the international global space, the voice of our Krishna consciousness with all of this knowledge that is available is almost absent. So there is a work on our table. We should not be satisfied. Our spiritual master, Srila Bhakti Maharaj, he did not train us to become armchair dictators. He did not impart knowledge on us so that we can become a temple commander. He did not impart this knowledge on us so that we can be comfortable. He gave us knowledge so that we can become uncomfortable with whatever is going on in the material world. Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur, he told Srila Prabhupada he was not satisfied. He has so many temples established in India. He has so many sannyasi disciples. He has so many followers that are following him. He is called a Simha Guru. He has achieved the highest level of respect as a Vaishnava, but he was not satisfied. He told Srila Prabhupada, he said, go out, go. Now Srila Prabhupada came to the West. He gave us this knowledge. And we are second, third generations of disciples of Srila Prabhupada. And what are we able to do with this knowledge in impacting the global space? The global space is so much of a turmoil. We can be so proud that we've got so much knowledge. And this is one thing that knowledge can do to you. Knowledge can become sometimes a curse rather than a blessing. When there is so much of availability of knowledge, one of the great various dangerous aspects of knowledge is that it becomes an overconfident. We become overconfident. We have all the knowledge, and we become proud that yes, we are devotees, we are Krishna conscious. Most of us are very very proud to go into the public and say Krishna consciousness is the best religious tradition. We have the best knowledge. What is the use of that best knowledge? Knowledge as such as this that we have at our fingertips to create an overconfidence, and which is what is happening to Krishna consciousness globally. Another danger that can be associated with so much knowledge that is available to us is that sometimes also it could become a problem. Knowledge could become a problem when it is misapplied or misinterpreted. So one of the challenges that we're facing as devotees that is making it difficult for us to impact our immediate and largest communities is because of misinterpretation and misapplication of Krishna consciousness knowledge that is available to us. Although we have so much of expanse of knowledge, this knowledge also sometimes it looks like a distraction to our devotion and service. When we have so much knowledge at our beck and call, why is it that we cannot change the situation? Srila Prabhupada was a world changer. He did not just speak. Srila Prabhupada, when the reporters come to Srila Prabhupada, Prabhupada will tell them, you want to see what is the effect of our knowledge? Look at these boys and girls. Few months ago, they were not. They do not even know their right from their left. But now, look at them. Prabhupada was not just speaking, he was able to impact. Another danger of knowledge is that we can start neglecting the role of grace. Brahmananda Brahmite Kone Bhagavan Jiva Guru Krishna Prasade Pai Bhakti Latabija. Lord Chaitanya Prabhu, he has given the seed of Bhakti. The Prabhupada has given to us. And we've gotten this grace. This grace is upon each and every one of us. But how neglectful are we? We're so empowered that we are so much at our beckon. The solution to the whole of the material world is situations. And how much impactful are we? Because so much knowledge, rather than giving us humility, have made some of us so proud and forget the purpose of cultivating knowledge in Krishna consciousness. So as we read these verses, these knowledges, these topics, this revelation of detailed information by Maitreya Muni, excuse me, to Vidura, and by extension to us, is so powerful. But what is most important for us is what we're doing with it. And as we are rounding another month of exciting intellectual conversation, powerful rendition of various devotees, let us reflect. We're calculating the months, the calendar of the time, of the year, of the days. But remember what Maitreya Muni told Vidura in the text number in text number 15 that we read. The goodness, the prime of this knowledge is that it diminishes the duration of our life for the ultimate purpose of releasing us from the illusion of material attachment. And if we do not remember this, then we have lost the purpose for which these texts are beautifully coined here in these verses of the Srimad Bhagavatam. So thank you very much for giving us the opportunity to share some few points on this wonderful narration between Maitreya Muni and Vidura in the third canto of the 11th chapter, text number 15 and 16 of Srimad Bhagavatam. Hare Krishna. So if there are questions, comments, contributions, corrections, that would be highly appreciated. Thank you.
Well, Hare Krishna. Thank you so much, Grace Salika Prabhu, for this powerful, fiery Krishna Katha shared with us today. Like Salika Prabhu just said, devotees, if anyone may have questions, comments, reflections, realizations you may want to ask or share, please indicate by using the hand emoji or your physical hand, and you'll be asked to unmute to ask your question or share your reflections, realizations. Hare Krishna. Well, Salika Prabhu, I have this question. Of course, I should say thank you, big thank you for speaking and sharing what you shared with us. Now, in the purport to text 16, which you also referenced, Sri Upanishad Mantra 9, Srila Prabhupada in both places was saying that dangerous education, material education is dangerous. Now, I would want you to shed some light as to why Srila Prabhupada is referring to material education being dangerous. Because I had said this some time ago, if I know a particular place to be dangerous, I wouldn't want to go there. I wouldn't want my loved ones to go there. But here I am, I'm trying to be a devotee, I'm trying to learn from Srila Prabhupada, and he's saying that material education is dangerous. Yet, I send my kids to this place. So, I strongly believe that there is a reason why Srila Prabhupada says material education is dangerous, which I am not getting. And therefore, I'm sending my kids to this place, which is dangerous. So if you may help shed some light as to what the context may be, or the reason why Srila Prabhupada says that material education is dangerous. Of course, not just Srila Prabhupada. Maitreya Muni said it the same thing to Vidura also. So if you may help, Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you very much for the beautiful question. This is a very nice question. If you go to that lecture I was referring to, and then probably I will share my screen. I was reading that lecture. Actually, it was coincidental because I randomly just listening to Prabhupada and read his text, and then because we're preparing for Jamastami, our annual souvenir, I was trying to get an article for the publication, and one of the first pages is sharing Srila Prabhupada's lectures. So when I got a call yesterday night that I have to give this class, and I was just getting the connections between these texts. Prabhupada beautifully answered that question you ask in the short form. In the short form of it, Prabhupada gave elaborate explanation. But in the end of that lecture, Prabhupada gave the direct answer to what you just asked. And Prabhupada said, education is required, but if education is wrongly diverted, it is very, very dangerous. This is the purport of this verse. So-called education has no value. Now, what is Prabhupada saying? When you look back at the beginning of that lecture, this article was actually published in the Back to Godhead. Back to Godhead. I think that was some few years back. I can't remember, it was a Back to Godhead magazine. When you look at the text, Prabhupada derived this, the Spanish 10. Those who are engaged in the culture of the science activity shall enter into the darkest regions of ignorance. What still are those who engage in the so-called knowledge and the purport? And Prabhupada said there are two kinds of education, material and spiritual, or Brahma Vidya and Jada Vidya. Jada Vidya means material education, and Jada means that which cannot move or matter. And Brahma Vidya is spiritual education. Spirit can move. Our body is a combination of spirit and matter. As long as the spirit is there, the body moves. Just as a man's coat and pants move as long as the man wears them. It appears that the coat and pants are moving, but actually the clothes appear to be moving only because the man is moving. Similarly, the body moves, material moves because the spirit soul moves. And the Prabhupada goes on, giving several examples. He uses the example of the car. So material education in itself is not bad, but it is useless for the soul. Material education is useful for the body because the body is matter. Like Prabhupada said, it's Jada Vidya. It's material education. It has no substance. It's only relevance. It's only when the soul is inside of it. So material education is not in itself bad because there is nothing bad in nature. Because material nature is also a part of Krishna's creation. So the material education is not bad in itself, but it is bad when the soul is in connection with the material body and its focus is limited to that knowledge that comprises of the body. So it is the forgetfulness of the self at the expanse of material knowledge that makes it bad. And that is why it is called dangerous. Because the living entity, the moment it enters, just and Prabhupada, when you read that lecture further, Prabhupada is explaining, just as a car, a man in a car is driving his car, and he hits another car, wow. And you see a typical language, a man will ask is, why have you hit me? You have not hit him. The car has just hit another car, but he has identified himself with the car. So the whole of the Vedic knowledge is to bring us to the understanding of our identity as separate from the body. And even material educationists now are realizing this. I was sharing an experience. Last week, I was in Abuja at a conference, international conference of democracy in Africa. And then few of the former Prime Minister of Kenya was there. Retired Right Honorable Raila Odinga, and then PLO, the popular Lumumba, was there. And Lumumba was explaining. He said, until and when we kill the mentality of tribe, ethnicity, my culture, he said there will never be peace. So material educationists are also understanding this, and this is evolution of knowledge. And when you look at these people talking, because they have been opportune, there is a popular YouTube of lecture of Lumumba, which he gave at one seminary that is over. I think I've seen it also shared in our ISKCON platforms, where he was giving that whatever he's talking about is based on his knowledge of reading the Mahabharata, and he was explaining that it is said, and he said, I agree to this. He said, it is said that one who has not read Mahabharata in this age, he has not had ethnic education. That is how powerful Mahabharata is. So anyone in this old planet who has not been able to read Mahabharata, he has not studied anything. Whether it is material knowledge, whether it is theology, whether it is religious knowledge, if he has not read Mahabharata, that is the importance, that is how powerful, because this book elucidates what is the essence. So material education is only glorious when spiritual knowledge is embedded inside of it. So when material knowledge or education, when it is separated from spiritual education, it becomes ignorance. So it becomes dangerous. Just like Prabhupada would also give an example. Milk is a very rich substance, drink, that enriches, that sustains life. But when that milk is poisoned by the small drop of the tongue of a snake, it becomes poisonous, it kills immediately. In the same way, material knowledge, when tested, when getting in touch with, when one studies material education without the spiritual knowledge, it becomes a poison, becomes dangerous. So therefore, education means education that is founded on the principles of Vedic knowledge or spiritual knowledge. And that is why Lord Krishna described it as the purest of education, because every other education is based on it. And in the purport to the text we read yesterday, text number 14, that is why Srila Prabhupada was explaining that this subject matter is very, very attractive to people, to a particular set of people. Prabhupada uses the word, to a particular set of people, is very enamored. When you look at that purport, Prabhupada said it's very attractive to them. But as far as we are concerned, Prabhupada explained this knowledge, although they are very, very attractive, but they are not our focus. Yes, we learn them for the purpose of navigating our activities, because we are in the material world, in the material body, living in the material environment. It is useful to us as much as that. So our preaching is not that material education is Boko Haram, like the Boko Haram will say, material education is sinful, is haram, like the Boko Haram says. We're not saying that. We're saying it is dangerous because we're not saying that it is a sin. We're not saying that it should not be studied, but it should not be studied at the expense of spiritual knowledge. In other words, material education should be a icing on the spiritual knowledge. Our Gurukula system of education is founded on spiritual knowledge. But alongside with that, material education is embedded because we are living in the material world, in the material body. So the material education is important. And that is why, as Upanishad tells us, that one who studies the culture of science and that of transcendence together is only person that is actually knowledgeable. So material education in our modern system of education is devoid of transcendental knowledge. And that is why those knowledge there that is given in material education becomes very dangerous. And Prabhupada will challenge that, where is that institution of learning that the subject matter of the soul is being treated? And we are advocating everywhere we go now, value-based education. Our spiritual master, Bhakti Titi Maharaj, he started IFAST, and he was doing the same thing. So we have started what we call Caste Educational Foundation. Initially, when I started that, I called that NGO, Center for Applied Spiritual Science. And that is what I started using in teaching in schools, in educational institutions. But as I will go into the global space, so because it was becoming a little bit confusing for people, so we abbreviate Center for Applied Spiritual Science to CAS, and we call it CAS Educational Foundation, focusing on value-based education. So wherever we go, we are propagating, we are advocating for value-based education. We are advocating as we go to all these different conferences and international global spaces. What we're advocating is that our system of education needs to be changed. The curriculum of education needs to be changed. And what are we advocating it for? That education they are studying will only become relevant, will only become useful, will only become a source of peace and harmony they are looking for, only when it is added up with the spiritual education, which we describe as value-based education, because material education is valueless when it does not have spiritual knowledge. So that's why we preach value-based education. And this UNESCO is gradually accepting this. We're having several conferences with UNESCO, and one of the way UNESCO is using the same knowledge is that they are talking about, you see, on UNESCO annual goals of focus now, they are talking of ethics education. And that's the same thing with teaching. So they're using their own language, but the essence is that we're saying, take ethic education or value-based education into your educational system. Otherwise, it becomes a poisonous endeavor, like that of kissing a snake. A man who kisses a snake knows that he will meet himself at the other side of the divide. Hare Krishna. I hope that answers the question someway.
Yeah, Hare Krishna. Thank you for the elaborate response. It's now, a student to say, making sense to me what Srila Prabhupada meant by saying material education is dangerous. Because you see, we have what we call fluid. Water is fluid. Gas or petrol is fluid. Engine oil is fluid. Transmission fluid is fluid. Power steering fluid is fluid. Brake fluid is fluid. But they all have their respective places to go in a vehicle in order for the vehicle to function right.
Absolutely.
So we live in this material world, and we need to have material education to live in this material world, because this is where we live. But if we think that the material education we are receiving is what is going to help transport us to the spiritual world, then it's dangerous. Just like putting transmission fluid into the let's say the power steering fluid compartment. Then you may break your motor, you may break your engine. Because I was thinking of Lord Krishna himself speaking to Arjuna in Bhagavad Gita chapter 3, text 10, 11, and 12. And if I may put it up here, let me see. Lord Krishna says that Sahayagya, along with the sacrifice. In the beginning of creation, the Lord of all creatures sent forth generations of men and demigods along with sacrifices for Vishnu, and blessed them by saying, "Be thou happy by this yagya, because its performance will bestow upon you everything desirable for living happily and achieving liberation." So living happily means that in this material world, and after that, we achieve liberation. Now, if we go to the next verse, let me do this. If we go to the next verse, which is 11, it says, "The demigods, being pleased by sacrifices, will also please you. And thus, by cooperation between men and demigods, prosperity will reign for all." So, if I go to school to learn about this physical body and understand how to properly use this body to make it healthy and use it to serve God, then it's helpful. When you said that any knowledge outside of Vedic knowledge is dangerous. I am wondering, is there any sort of knowledge in this world that is outside of Vedic knowledge? I think Vedic knowledge encompasses all knowledge. There is knowledge of economics, there is knowledge of agriculture, there is knowledge of martial art, military, there is knowledge of everything in the Vedic knowledge. So I'm wondering how sometimes we may say that knowledge outside of Vedic knowledge is dangerous when every knowledge we can think of is encased in Vedic knowledge. But I am thinking, and please correct me if I'm wrong, I'm thinking that if...
Very intelligent question, Sadi Prabhu.
if...
that was why I went back to the conversation between Prahlad Maharaj and his father.
Yeah.
And I started from the answer that the two teachers of Prahlad Maharaj said to Hiranyakasipu. And they told him, they said, "O enemy of King Indra, whatever your son Prahlad has said was not taught to him by me or anyone else." That is a very powerful statement. So it is called concoction, concocted education. What we see today as material education is concoction education. It's not material in the real sense of it. It's concocted education called material education. Because real material education is the expansion of Maya, which is part of Krishna, as you rightly said. And that knowledge is not separate from Krishna knowledge. Just like Prabhupada explains in the purport of these last 3-4 verses that we're treating. This knowledge cannot be separated from Krishna's knowledge. And that is what Prahlad Maharaj was explaining to his demoniac father. So Prahlad Maharaj was saying that, my dear father, this education that I'm talking about, that it is not something that it's separate from what you know, but that knowledge which his father is thinking of is what was concocted outside of the Vedic knowledge. So that education, that is why Prabhupada, you see the Prabhupada call it so-called education. And even in that dangerous education lecture, the last word Prabhupada used there was that, if Prabhupada used the word, when you go back to that purpose, Prabhupada said that so-called education has no value. Let me share that again, once again. That was the conclusion of Prabhupada on that lecture. After analyzing so many things, Prabhupada is saying that the last word Prabhupada said here is this. Where is that? He said, so-called knowledge, so-called education has no value. So what is considered to be education, and that's why we say education outside of Vedic knowledge, because if it is actually Vedic education or Vedic knowledge, it must comprise of knowledge of the self, of the soul. So that is why Srila Prabhupada, when he get to the West, he kept on challenging. He said, you have so much nice arrangement for education system. You have so many kindergarten, secondary, primary. You have made so many arrangements. He said, but what are these so-called education producing? They are producing hippies. So what kind of education is this? It's not education. And that is why Prabhupada always use so-called. It meant that word is very powerful, although it looks so simple. But when Prabhupada is saying so-called, it means that it is not education. Real education is Vedic education, because Vedic education encompasses both material and transcendental knowledge. And that is what we read in the Upanishad, that one who cultivate those both matter or Jada Vidya and what? Brahma Vidya together can live in this material world eternally and will be happy. And it's alignment with what you read in chapter 3 of the Bhagavad Gita, Lord Krishna himself is saying. So because this knowledge of how to live here and become happy is knowledge of material education. This is what Maitreya Muni is giving to Vidura. This is what this material planet is like. This is the calculation of its time. This is how it operates. This is how it expands itself. This is how many lunar calendar. This is how the sun moves. This is how the moon moves. And when you study all of these things, it brings you to understand how to navigate in this. Just like when you enter into a car, you want to drive a car. A good driver, even no matter how expert he is, when he starts a car that he has not entered before, you must have experienced this yourself. Even if you are buy the new car by yourself, when you enter the car first, a good driver first, when he starts the car, he will not just start moving. He looks at the dashboard, he looks at the various buttons, then he starts driving. He doesn't say, because I already know how to drive, just enter the car, kick start and start moving. He will crash. So therefore, that when we're talking about education outside of Vedic knowledge, what is being taught is so-called knowledge. It's not knowledge, but we are the one calling it education or knowledge. It is not education. It is not knowledge. Those knowledge are not knowledge. That is what Prabhupada described them as so-called education, because they are not education. Real education is material and spiritual, which is given in the Vedic scriptures. And both of them simultaneously studied, give happiness, give blissfulness to living entity in this material world, and takes him back to Godhead. But when the material living entities, materially conditioned living entities, when they deviate from this knowledge and embrace this concocted idea, let us even look at it. Real chemistry, real mathematics, where would you find it? We are talking about the detailed discussion of the Mercury of astrology yesterday, and when you go to real astronauts, there is nowhere whatever they can present that is not taken out of Vedic knowledge. So whatever substance that you find, even in the so-called knowledge, is taken out of the Vedic knowledge. If you trace back those knowledge, they are parts of knowledge extracted from the Vedic knowledge to do what? To decorate. Just like the expert medicine doctor or pharmacist or whatever they call, puts a very bitter pill in a coated sweet cover and he gives it to the child. Of course, he meant good. But in this case, materialists they do not have any good intentions. They put a bitter pill and they covered it with so-called education, called material education. But that is not material education. Real material education is what we find in the Vedic scriptures. And this is what materialism is given to Vidura here. That is material education, because it gives knowledge about the whole of the expanse of the material nature. But what they have is not education. It is concocted education. It's so-called education. It's not real education. They just decorate it with some extract from the Vedic literatures just to give credence to whatever they are doing. Just like a fake medicine man or a pharmacist. He has a nice chemist. He has a nice doctor sign in the front, but he's a quack. And the people are deceived. So when they talk about mathematics, when they talk about physics, when they talk about chemistry, they are just like that quack doctor or quack pharmacist who is using a very authentic language to deceive people into his deceit of quackness. So what they call material education is not material education. It is the concocted education, so-called education. I hope this helps a little.
Well, Hare Krishna. Thank you for the explanation. Anyone else with something to ask or to share, please? Madhavan Prabhu, please, you may unmute.
Oh, sorry. Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
All praise on television, please. All praise to Srila Prabhupada, and all praise to Assembly of Devotees.
Hare Krishna.
So, this question asked by Professor Adib, I know he intentionally asked the question so that people don't start looking at us as Boko Haram or something like that.
Yeah.
In the where the statement was made in the ninth mantra of the Isopanisha,
Mm.
if we try to look at the purport, even the first paragraph, the reason they made a reason, they said because of the stress placed on material advancement to the exclusion of the most important part of life, the spiritual aspect. From our understanding, it's like someone who become a professor of physics or professor of whatever, but at the end of the day, he doesn't have any knowledge, transcendental knowledge, or it's even advanced to Krishna consciousness. Because ordinarily, one will have thought someone is a professor who has vast in knowledge. Then when we introduce spiritual knowledge or transcendental knowledge, then at least you should have some idea, if not complete. But unfortunately, some of them, they just took, I'm a professor of physics, I'm a professor of this, and they think that's all about knowledge. So I think that's what it explains, that exclusion of the most important part of life, which is the spiritual aspect. And Prabhu SALIKA also quoted the mantra 11, which also clarifies the point. Because one has to learn the process of nations and that of transcendental knowledge side by side, that only them can transcend the influence of repeated birth and death and enjoy the full blessings of immortality. So these two knowledge is very important. If you say you have the knowledge of nations, you're devotee, you don't have material knowledge, you're a failure. At the end of the day, your life is not balanced. You don't know about management, you don't even have any particular field of knowledge. So I think this knowledge, both of them are very, very important. You have to send your children to school, they must be knowledgeable, but at the same time, you should also give them that transcendental knowledge. Only then they are complete and they become successful. That's just my little contribution. I don't know if it makes any meaning. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you very much, Madhavan Prabhu, for the contributions. Yeah, Prabhupada is so elucidating in his writings. And we just need to read Prabhupada. That's what we need to do. Thank you very much for the comment.
Hare Krishna. Thank you, Madhavan Prabhu. Anyone else with something to ask or to share? Well, Shrimabara Acharya Prabhu, please, you may unmute. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, please accept my humble obeisances. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. All glories to the assembled devotees.
Yeah.
Thank you for the delivery. This question has been it's been a bone of contention on this platform for some time, especially when Salika Prabhu gives class. Not the first time we're hearing this. So I think sometimes back I also contributed, But there are two things here. First, I was thinking that just like the analogy we normally use for everything material, that it depends on the use, right? So we say like knife. So in the hand of a surgeon, it's useful. In the hand of a bandit, it's dangerous. So I think we can apply that, in that sense, that yeah, so I was thinking along that line. And then Salika Prabhu started saying there is a difference between material knowledge and concocted knowledge. Then it got me lost. concocted or not, it's still material. so when you started trying to separate, material knowledge from concocted knowledge, that makes it difficult. So now, so we can say, okay, Prabhu, if you have toothache, you go to a dentist who has acquired, concocted knowledge. You not if your being breaks down, you go to a mechanic, an engineer who has a material concocted knowledge. So you will not say, no, I need a medical engineer. So we can say that everything is useful. I mean, we cannot say that, So Srila Prabhupada criticized the material so-called knowledge because they're so proud, thinking that they know everything, and usually it ends with the conclusion that there's no God when they begin to see like this. So Prabhupada sometimes criticize them using such words like so-called knowledge, everything. But like we can see from our scriptures, our scripture is Upanishad rightly mentions that side by side, these both nations and spiritual knowledge be cultivated as alike. And also, I think once we used the example of Radhanath Maharaj when he gave a lecture at the university, and some students, think, do you want also to become sannyasi and give up? What will happen to the society? You need doctors, you need driver, you need the cooks. And Radhanath Maharaj said, no, that's not our intention. So if we speak like this, like we just want everyone to become, like us, quote unquote, So the material world has to exist, and that's why Srila Prabhupada emphasized Varnashram, so that we do not overemphasize one over the other. There has to be a balance. So, and the balance means that we learn to honor the importance of everything. Everything in creation of Krishna is good, everything. But it depends on the use. Everything is good. So, but when the acharyas are criticizing the use, we should not think that it is the essence that is being criticized. Material knowledge or so-called concocted knowledge has its use. When you are in need of it, you will realize it. So anyway, that's my contribution.
Thank you so much for Sriman Varnacharya Prabhu. Sometimes for emphasis, when you speak, sometimes you want to focus on a particular point, you speak in this manner. Because actually, like Sadi Prabhu's question, what we call material education and spiritual education cannot be separated, because they are two edges of one coin. It is the manifestation of Krishna in two different ways. So, and that is why the acharyas have explained that Krishna is manifested in his primary two energies and ultimately three energies: the internal, external, and the marginal energy. So anything outside of that is said to be illusion or non-existing. Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur gave a very elaborate explanation on this subject, that knowledge that is devoid or cannot be found in the knowledge of Vedic teachings or Krishna as it's given. And that is why I even quote materialists, so-called materialists today. They start referencing, and I was quoting Professor Lumumba, where he said that if anyone has not read, and it's on the YouTube, anyone can go to reference it. He said, if anyone on this earth planet has not read Mahabharata, he has not actually do any theological education. Because if you want to actually teach subject matter about God or spiritual knowledge or theology, you must read Mahabharata. And that is the emphasis. That is the importance of what we're trying to say. Because real material knowledge means that which is connected to Krishna, because you cannot talk about Maya without Krishna. You cannot talk about Krishna without Maya. And that's what Krishna says. Devi esa gunama yi mama Maya. Mama Maya duratya. This material energy is my energy. It's part of me. It's not, you can't separate material knowledge from Krishna knowledge. But what is so-called material, and that is why we call it concocted, because it is nothing related to what Krishna has taught as material knowledge, because Krishna said, this is material, my material energy, consisting of the three modes of material nature. This is what it is. Krishna gives us a description of what it is. But what these so-called material educationists are teaching is completely separated from Krishna. And that is why we said it is not, you cannot be qualified in real sense as real material education at that level. For general context, for general semantic use of word, one can say material knowledge. But when we say material knowledge in its real sense, material knowledge means knowledge of Maya. And that is part of Krishna. Krishna says, my energy. And that knowledge cannot be separated from Krishna. So that knowledge, which is devoid of Krishna, is not even Maya. It's concocted, it's so-called. And that is why Prabhupada is using the so-called knowledge, because it has nothing to do with knowledge. Although, and that's why I give an example of a pharmacist who has a very nice chemist shop or pharmacist store. And they put all the science of pharmacists there. And that is what they do. They talk about mathematics, they talk about engineering, as you just give an example of a mechanic. These are all aspects of material knowledge. But they put all of this as a covering to expound their so-called knowledge. Because their so-called knowledge is their real focus. Because if they are really teaching the material of material, if they are teaching the real material knowledge, then the conclusion will have been that those kind of a knowledge will have included spiritual knowledge with it, because it cannot be separated from it. And that is why material Muni now, when he's talking to Vidura, he's telling him at Vidura that this knowledge that I'm giving you, this is the purpose behind it. But when the so-called material educationists are talking, they do not connect it in any way to Krishna. And that is why it becomes so-called or concocted knowledge. It cannot be in the real sense of it for a Vaishnava be called material education, because real material education is what Vidura is getting here. Vidura is getting material education from Maitreya Muni, but that material education is connected, is emphasizing the Krishna factor. But these so-called educationists, they are giving mathematics, they are giving physics, they are giving astronomy, they are giving astrology, they are giving engineering, but they do not relate it to Krishna. And that is why it becomes concocted, because it has no relevance, it has no value, as Prabhupada used the word. It has no value. It does not exist anywhere, because it does not connect with the essence of what education stands for, because education in the real sense of it, based on the very teaching, is material education and spiritual education. That is complete knowledge. But that education that is devoid of spiritual education is not actually can be called material education in this sense. They put some material education extract to cover it, like a quack doctor who put a nice pharmacist shop outside, but he's a quack. He has no knowledge of medicine, but he just put those signs there. So this so-called mathematics they are teaching in the school, physics, engineering, vulcanizer that they are teaching, they are just using it as a covering to teach their essence, sense enjoyment, which is illusion. That's why we call it. But thank you so much for the contribution, Prabhu. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you so much. Shri Govinda Prabhu, please you may unmute.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you very much, Salika Prabhu. My respectful obeisances to you. My respectful obeisances to the Vaishnavas. And thank you very much for this powerful presentation as always. You always fire up, Prabhu. You know, what funnies me a lot is that when you are firing like that, you can see that you are in the spirit, firing. And when you're about to end everything, you just come down. So, so you can understand how the Spirit is working through you. Thank you very much. But my question is, in the middle part of your presentation, you mentioned something very, very important. That with all this knowledge that we have acquired, why, how has it benefit us? And how are we using this knowledge to benefit the society, and more especially the society around us? So this is very, very important to me. And my question would be that now it's not that the devotees are not trying. The devotees are preaching every day. Food distribution is still going on. But we see minority of people joining the movement comparing to 10 years ago, 20 years ago. Even though it's the same preaching that we are doing. What is the cause? Why is it that people are not joining us, even though we are preaching? Why is it that people are not joining? Is it because even though we are preaching, but the purity is not enough? Because it is said that purity is a force. Is it because the purity is not that high, and that's why we are not attracting people enough? Or is it because we are not giving what the society is expecting from us? Because I quite remember those days when we were in Ghana, and more especially Hari Chakra Prabhu, when we were doing the public preaching, people were joining the movement in their numbers. People were coming like anything. And so I'm just wondering, is it because the philosophy is so high that people do not understand? Because when you listen to Srila Prabhupada lectures, when you listen to Bhaktisiddhanta Maharaj's lectures, you see that there's a breakdown of the philosophy. Chakra Prabhu was saying that I want these things to be explained to me like I'm 6 years old. Like I'm 6 years old. So is it because the philosophy we are giving is too high for people to understand? Is it because the philosophy is not presented the way it should be presented, and that's why people are not joining? So please, can you help? Because definitely, like we said, you should be able to make impact on society, and that will make our gurus very, very happy. So how do we go about this situation? How are we going to attract more souls into this movement? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Prabhu, for this beautiful question. This is a very important one. Before I will directly answer you, I was quoting one reference, but I didn't go there. For Saturday, probably you bring this text out. 11.11.3, Srimad Bhagavatam, 11 Canto. It's also talking about this subject. 11th Canto, chapter 11, text number 3. And this was what Krishna is telling Uddhava. Oh, Uddhava, both knowledge and ignorance being product of Maya. Just listen to that text. Both knowledge and ignorance. It didn't say, he's not talking about knowledge, ordinary ignorance. He say both knowledge and ignorance being product of Maya are expansions of my potency. Thank you. Both knowledge and ignorance are beginningless and perpetually award liberation and bondage to embodied living beings. when you look at the purport to this verse, purport did not give the purport to this, but when you look at this verse stated to Udava, it clearly states knowledge can be a cause of liberation. That's why I ended the class. It can be a source of liberation. It can be a source of bondage. And in relation to your question, Prabhu, I gave 5 points of how knowledge can become a source of misplacement of purpose. When one has knowledge, intellectual knowledge, and it becomes a mood of intellectual superiority, it becomes an obstacle in his spiritual life, and it prevents further learning and genuine connection. You hinted on the answer with yourself when you said, is there no purity? And there are 5 points I gave in summarizing the class. I said, well, number 1, I'll come back to concluding on summary, but I said overconfidence and intellectual pride. Knowledge, when one is accessible to expansive knowledge like what we have in the Vedic scripture as given to us by our Acharya, it could lead to overconfidence and intellectual pride. 2, it could lead to misinterpretation and misapplication of the knowledge. It's very important. It could lead to misinterpretation and misapplication of the knowledge. When knowledge is expansive as we have it, it will also become a distraction from the devotion, which is the essence of the knowledge in itself. 4, that same knowledge can become a neglecting the role of the grace, which is required to be able to impactfully deliver the knowledge that is received. And 5, the importance of the knowledge can deny us the importance of humility and surrender. These are the ingredients that is creating lack of followership. When you look at the Srimad Bhagavatam in the 12th canto, we know that as Kali Yuga increases in its time, there will be less and less and less attraction to spirituality. But we see practically in our lives that as our spiritual masters, as Srila Prabhupada, when they manifest, wherever they are attracted. It is what you entered upon, the Bhakti Shakti. So what we need to see, what we need to check in our own individual practice of what we have received is that, is our knowledge creating, the knowledge you have acquired in Krishna consciousness, is it creating an overconfidence in us, an intellectual pride that we fail to understand what we need to do to attract people? And I gave a sample when I was explaining that. Srila Prabhupada went with all of the vast knowledge of Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada came down to earth. This is the practicality. Prabhupada came down to earth. He was not just confident because he had this knowledge. When Prabhupada arrived at Boston in his that famous poem, he said, I do not have the language to speak. I do not have, with all of the knowledge that Prabhupada has. Prabhupada is not just even an ordinary devotee. He's an empowered incarnation of this Lord for a particular purpose. But he said, if you like, make me dance. So when we become overconfident and develop intellectual pride over others, it can become a very great obstacle in impacting such knowledge into others, because the knowledge of spirituality is not based on how much you can speak. It's about this energy, and that is why the Acharyas emphasize sadhu sangha, because a sadhu is not just speaking, he's carrying the potency of what he's speaking. It's not like the Americans who say, follow what I say, not what I do. They are both speakers and doers of what they do, but in most cases, what we have seen is that our Krishna consciousness, receipt of Krishna consciousness by us, most often times, from what we have seen, we can see this evidently in our community, that many devotees who are supposed to be the flying colors, to be the effulgent representative of Krishna consciousness, have become so overpowered by overconfidence and proud that they become so intellectually proud. I'm the guru, I'm the sannyasi, I'm the temple commander. These things, they do not radiate because you can't pretend it. It is contagious. Srila Prabhupada exhibited that. And that is why we see our chariots, they were able to attract. Our not attracting that means that we should query ourselves. What is it that we are doing that we're not able to attract people as it will be? In a one interview I had, someone asked me, he said, how many devotees you have in Jos? And I said, oh, I don't have any resident devotee, unfortunately. He said, but I see that you have so many followers. And I could see, actually, this is one of the Indian members in Jos. And he said, but I see that, I see in so many global international organizations, you're preaching at different levels. He said, but why is it that? I said, look, the reality is that not everybody is given the same Shakti. What I am giving is what I'm exhibiting. And I'm contented with the fact that whatever I am giving, I'm able to use it to attract some people. And that is what a real disciple should be thinking about. And this is a question for individual one of us. The second thing I said was that the misinterpretation and misapplication of the knowledge will also become an obstacle, because when we have all of this education, all of this knowledge that is within us, and the acharyas have given us a powerful, which is the third point I was talking about, and the fourth one, neglecting the role of grace, that when we recite, when we start the class, most often, almost all the speaker will recite, Mukankaroti Bachalam Pangam Lagayate Girim. Is reminding ourselves that in ourselves, in our own, we cannot do anything. So, and this is not just to recite, it's to carry that mood, to exemplify that. And the more we act these moods, the more we are able to attract people. But the reality is that in Krishna consciousness, because of our misuse of intellectual power that we have so minimized ISKCON movement to that extent that everybody must be a Sankirtan devotee, everybody must be a pujari, everybody must be a temple sweeper. And that is what we are missing in Prabhupada, what he has taught us. Prabhupada did not make all of his devotees a Sankirtan devotees. He did not make all of them a pujari. He did not make all of them an artist. Prabhupada used the psychophysical tendencies, the qualities that is inherent in everyone, and is encouraging them, is empowering them to use that. But our temple settings now, we have become so conditioned that we want to give everybody the same thing. We want everybody to become a pujari. If everybody that comes to the temple must follow a particular same routine, that is not it. When I joined the movement, maybe I will not be who I am today. My temple president, Omkara, and my regional secretary, Vasudev, what they did, they will personally hide me in a toilet to study Bhagavatam, to take me out of the routine of the temple activities. And those inherent gifts I got is what made me opportune to be able to read Bhagavatam in my first, second year of being a devotee. So when I'm talking about this, what I'm saying is that it is applicable in most of our temples all over the planet. We are not using what Prabhupada gave to us. And it is as a result of these 5 deficiencies of too much of knowledge that we have at our disposal has covered us in different ways, limiting us from using, because Krishna consciousness in the recent, Acharya Prabhu just mentioned something. That is why the importance of Varnashram is there. Because Krishna consciousness is not about everybody becoming a Sankirtan devotee. It's not about everybody becoming a temple pujari. It's about looking at what quality. We have the fiber Miridanga today in ISKCON. Not because Prabhupada did a fiber Miridanga before. A disciple went to Srila Prabhupada. Prabhupada was in London, and a disciple came to Srila Prabhupada. I'm trying to remember that devotee disciple's name. He went to meet Srila Prabhupada. He said, Srila Prabhupada, everybody is giving you Sankirtan report, and I'm feeling so ashamed that I cannot give you report like this, Prabhupada. I'm useless. And Prabhupada said, you don't have to be a Sankirtan devotee. What is it that you can do for Krishna? What do you know you can do? And he said, oh, by my education, I've studied how to use fiber. I can use fiber to do, instead of us bringing Midanga, when they bring Midanga in the early days from India, the clay Midanga, if they import 10 of them, almost more than half of them is broken. He said, Prabhupada, I can solve this problem if by using fiber, and then we use the same Midanga head, skin. And Prabhupada said, go ahead. And that is why we have fiber Midanga everywhere, all over ISKCON today. So we are not following what the acharyas has given. And that is the point I was trying to mention, because our not being able to impart our communities, because when we bring people to devotional service today, when we join devotional service, the idea was not to make everybody the same thing. The idea was to look at what internal quality each and everybody has, and then empower them to do that. And that is what is lacking in our Krishna consciousness. And it's as a result of these 5 points I mentioned: overconfidence and intellectual pride, misinterpretation and misapplication of the knowledge that we have, distraction from the real devotional service because of rules and regulation. You are offending me. You have made a parade, neglecting the role of grace in what we do, that we have no power of ability to do anything except the grace that is given by Krishna, and the importance of humility and surrender. So these 5 key things are what are mitigating us in being able to exemplify, to replicate what the acharyas are giving to us. The empowerment is already there. So we should not lose the focus of the role of the grace. We should not lose focus of the need for humility and surrender. We should not lose the focus of devotion, which is the essence. And we should not lose the fact that even though there is a knowledge, it can be misinterpreted, it can be misapplied, and it can create artificial intellectual confidence and pride. If we put that at the back of our mind, then our Krishna consciousness must, even in Kali Yuga, this is a movement that is supposed to last for 10,000 years. So there is no reason why we should not be I'll be very direct before I round up on this answer to this question. We look at a center of one of our preaching location in West Africa, in Lome. We have a temple there that was originally started by a devotee. And when that devotee left that place, how many congregational members that is going there? But that same devotee in the same town started another center in another place, and go and look at the numbers of persons visiting there, because that is the empowerment that he has. But because we become so overpowered by pride and be confident, over intelligent, we do not recognize the quality that is inherent in individuals. And we're struggling. We're internal quarrels, unnecessary jealousy, unnecessary rivalry. Each and every one of us are given a unique empowerment. And that empowerment is what we need to find. And we see all of the branches of Krishna consciousness striving. But one person has a particular talent, and he wants it to be glorified above every other talent. Is superior to every other talent because he's a sannyasi, or because he's a brahmachari, or because he's a brahmana, or because he's a temple commander, or because he has the ability to do sankirtan, then it should be celebrated at every other qualifications, every other talent that is inherent in other devotees, even if it's a bhakta, should be killed. That is some of the things that is creating the problems. And until and when we remove all of these barriers that are created by ourselves to ourselves in application of what our acharyas have given us, we will not see Krishna consciousness growing. Srila Prabhupada didn't do any magic that he did not give to us. The secret of magic of Srila Prabhupada, the magic that Srila Bhakti Swami Maharaj gave to us, the magic that Brahmananda Swami made when they came to West Africa and in every other region of the world. I was in Mexico recently and I was asking, it is said that wherever Prabhupada touched, there is a kind of a explosive manifestation there. And I was asking the devotees, I asked to give a lecture on a Sunday, and I was telling the devotees, I said, Srila Prabhupada came here twice, in 72 and 1975. And I said, today you're asking me to speak. I'm going to repeat what Srila Prabhupada repeated to you. I said, it should become a virus. In the whole of Mexico, we have only 3 centers. I said, this is a shame. For a center that is over 50 years, Srila Prabhupada was physically here. Why is it that we're not able to transmit? So it's not a West African thing, it's a global thing. Everywhere you go to, and I feel pain when I went to Portugal, when I went to the main temple center in the city of what is that name of that city in Portugal? The capital city of Portugal, Lisbon. When I was in Lisbon, the main center in Lisbon was in a that temple was a massive temple when it started 15 years ago. I was shocked when I get to that place. They were in one small room. I took a delegation that I was preaching with to that place to visit. And I went there. I could not believe only 2 devotees are there. And the congregation that are there are not up to 10. So it is not just West Africa, it is globally, but the same problem is the same problem. It is not just a problem that is associated with West Africa, it is global. This madness or this distraction, this loss of focus on what Prabhupada has given is what is mitigating the expansion of Krishna consciousness. Krishna consciousness as given is potent as it was in 1965, is potent as it was in 1978, is potent as it was when Srila Prabhupada was with us. But how we avoid these 5 pitfalls, which I mentioned, is what will determine how we expand the scope of Krishna consciousness, recognizing our individual talents and allowing this talent to grow. Sahadev has the capacity to develop congregational devotees. Empower him to do that, and you will see congregation will full everywhere. Salika has the capacity to cook in the kitchen. Give him that capacity, encourage him in that capacity. Let us allow the psychophysical tendencies of everyone. Chateau Vanya Maya Sistan, Guna Kama Vibhagisa. Lord Krishna has given each and everybody a powerful, very powerful talent. Not one among us. It's not empowered in one particular way or the other way. But killing that talent is what is mitigating our expansion. It is not different. Krishna consciousness is not different from what it was in 50 years ago or today. It will not be different in the next 10 years. Krishna consciousness will continue to be potent as it is supposed to be. But it's not expanding. It's our distraction, our losing focus on the 5 mitigating things that are identified. There could be more of them. But these 5 things, after so many research, is what I come up with this. There could be many of them. But these are the things I see from my perspective that are mitigating our expansion. How can you explain this? In the whole of West Africa, when we started this movement, our temple expanded. How did it expand? Srila Krishna Pad, it started in Lagos. And gradually, over the period of 5-10 years, the whole of West Africa was flooded with devotees. When we moved them here, we no longer transfer devotees from one place to another place. We no longer move devotees from one temple to another temple. We do not know, we have lost the culture of looking at what is needed. Even materially, let us even look at it. This is even against nature. If you give the food to the nose, the person will, the human being will die unless you give the food to the mouth. And when somebody is eating food through another part of the body, except for the mouth, it's abnormal. And that person is nearing death. So when we are trying to do things against the way the Acharya does it, we can never experience the expansion. Why? Because we do not do what they do. Srila Prabhupada, when he sent Chamashundra to London, when he sent devotees to San Francisco, Prabhupada was not waiting. Prabhupada was doing what? Prabhupada was looking at individual talents that Krishna is bringing to him, and he was using them according to Krishna's empowerment. But we're not doing all of that, and we're expecting miracle to happen. It will not happen. We will not expand. We will continue. As like Krishna Prabhupada said in 2002, when he came to West Africa, he said, I guess and I pray this is the lowest you can go to, but we have even go beyond that lowest. As at 2003, 2004, when he came, we are still having, in average of the temple, we are still having over 300 devotees in every West Africa, in Nigerian temples alone. How many today? You cannot count 30 devotees. This is our deviation. It is all of us. We're not doing the right thing. That is the reality. There is no Kali Yuga influence. We are not allowing Krishna consciousness to expand as it's supposed to expand because we are all in Maya. We are not doing what the Acharyas are doing. We are not giving everyone the opportunity to expand that empowerment that each and everyone has. We've lost the focus, and that is why it is happening. And not only in West Africa, globally it is happening. I'm sorry, Prabhu, if I have spoken so long.
Hare Krishna. Thank you, Salika Prabhu. I believe Shri Guru Krishna Parampara are all seeing your heartfelt emotions. There is a reason why you're speaking the way you're speaking, because at least we all can feel that you have some love for Shri Guru and Krishna, and you want to see the best happen. So we pray that their lordships sees our plea and helps us to get to where we want to be. We've been here for over 2 hours, so we're going to humbly suggest to devotees that we'll bring this to a close, and we'll continue our discussion again tomorrow by Shri Guru Krishna's grace. Madhavan Prabhu, I see your hand up. Do you have something quick to say?
I have something quick to say. Quick.
All right.
Yeah. Just a couple of days ago, I told a devotee that nobody likes him. Nobody speaks well of him. Members inside the temple, members, people outside, people are neighbors, common people. Nobody likes this person. So I have to tell him. So our problem is our character. Philosophy aside, your own personal character. If your character is not good, Krishna, we are getting closer to Krishna. Krishna has attractive qualities. So we should be increasing it. Our quality should be attractive, we should be increasing it. But when it becomes something else, then there's a problem. And that's what it affects mostly. Just to summarize what Salika Prabhu was emphasizing. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you for sharing. Well, this is a reminder to all of us that we all should try to do the best, especially when we know what is the right thing to do. So with that being said, we're going to humbly request all the devotees to kindly unmute, and we all chant Hare Krishna Mahamantra to express our appreciation to our revered speaker, His Grace Salika Prabhu, for sharing his love and wisdom with us today. Jai. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna,
Hare
Hare
Krishna.
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 Krishna, Krishna,
Hare
Hare
Hare.
Hare.
Hare
Hare Rama, Hare Rama.
Rama,
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 Hare Hare.
Panchakapatarbhyascha kripa sindhubhya evacha kirtanam pavanabhyo vaishnavabhyo namo namaha.
Hare Krishna.
Hare.
Salika, okay. Shri Salika, you the host.